boy. Let's return now to our exclusive interview with Juul Labs CEO Kevin Burns. He acknowledged that we do not know the long-term effects of vaping. When you were considering this job, you took it in 2017. As I understand it, your daughter, 16, didn't want you to take it. Mm-hmm. Why?
15 at the time. She was worried. She did not know much about the product and the company, and she was worried what the company focus was and what the product was.
But she was a teenager at the time. She was already familiar with it. Didn't that tell you something?
Yeah, my teenage daughter doesn't represent the 1.1 billion smokers around the world, though. She has no exposure to smokers. We live in a community where it has very few smokers and a very low smoking rate. So for me, I looked at the opportunity to have a huge impact on the #1 source of preventable death in the world, which is getting people off of cigarettes. I said that's a massive public health opportunity.
And our Dr. Tara Narula is here to break down what we do know about e-cigarettes. Doctor, good morning. There's a lot to chew over in this conversation. What jumped out to you?
Well, I think what jumps out to me is the issues with the lung disease that we're seeing, that we reported on last week. You know, we've talked a lot about the effects of e-cigarettes on the brain in a youth population, affecting attention and learning and memory, the cardiovascular effects. And I think a lot of these are intangible for parents and kids to wrap their mind around. They're sort of long-term problems. But when you see a child intubated on a ventilator, suddenly this becomes very real and very scary. And I think this is really a wake-up call for every parent listening to this story today to get up and have a conversation with their kids today, tomorrow, this weekend about vaping. You can argue the merits for, smokers to help them quit, but nobody is saying that this has value or benefit in a youth population.
So you see this as a call to action for parents. What should they know about the toxicity?
Well,
what do you want them to know?
I think they need to know that when I spoke to Dr. Chapman yesterday in Minnesota, they said that they're seeing these pattern of inhalation injury that looks similar in all the kids who are presenting, kids who previously had no lung disease, who were healthy, ages 15 to 23, who suddenly have shortness of breath, chest pain, flu-like symptoms, and within a days to a week are ending up on oxygen, on a ventilator. Now, many of them have been discharged, but the question is, what is the long-term ramification? What are the long-term ramifications going to be to the lungs in these
parents
patients?
Don't even know, Tara, that their kids are vaping. That story that was in the news recently, the parents were shocked as their son is in a coma, medically induced coma, that he was even vaping.
So parents need to make themselves aware of vaping, right? We can no longer avoid this. It needs to be part of our understanding. We need to know the facts about what the problems are so we can explain that to our kids. We need to know what the vaping devices look like.
It looks like a little USB thing.
Exactly. It can look like a pen, a USB. A lot of them can be easily concealed. They don't have a lot of vapor. So parents need to be on the lookout for that. And they really need to be having frank, open conversations with their kids, starting very early as kindergarten.
Now, some of the teens who've gotten sick have reported using THC in these vaporizers. Is that part of the problem, that products that are not necessarily Juul products, that are not necessarily nicotine, are being put into these devices?
That absolutely could be part of the problem, but we really don't know yet. The state health officials, the CDC, the FDA are all on this right now because they're seeing this flood of cases throughout the country, and we really do need to figure out what exactly it is. But in the meantime, the reality is whatever it is, it needs to be something that's avoided in a youth population.
So that device on the table there, that Juul, it actually belongs to Linda, who's in hair and makeup, who did my amazing wave this morning.
Who's not a teenager.
Who's not a teenager. Who's an adult smoker who is now midway to switching, and she's trying to use Juul to help her. She was saying this morning that she hears the reports of these lung illnesses, she hears our coverage of it, and it makes her worry, and she pushes her back toward cigarettes. So there's kind of two messages here. There's the teen message, but then the adult message. What is the message to grown-ups who are hearing this? What do they do? Should they switch? Should they not?
I think we need more research, and we've said this before, and we're getting more research. There was just a study that came out in February looking at e-cigarettes versus traditional nicotine replacement therapy and which might be better to help smokers quit. And it may be that down the road we have proof that these are actually beneficial. But right now, as far as what is recommended, it is not one of the recommended ways. We have the gum, the patch, other medications, counseling. But I don't think anybody can say that it doesn't potentially have value for current smokers. But that's one issue, as you said. And what I really want to focus on, what I think we really need to focus on, is the youth population, because,
What about all the people, when young people do things, they often do them together. So what about teenagers who might be around vapors, inhaling that vapor?
Right.
Secondhand.
Yeah, are there any secondhand
Good
risks?
question.
So because these have only been out for 11 years really on the market, not only do we not have long-term research on what the effects are on you if you use e-cigarettes down the road, are you going to develop cancer or other problems, we don't have a research really on the secondhand smoke effects. But it would make sense logically that if you're inhaling something that someone else is using and you're close by, certainly you could be exposed to whatever those chemicals are.
The Juul, oh, go ahead.
Well, you say your concern is about the teenagers. It does seem like people like the Juul, Mr. Burns, that they are now trying to dial it back on how they were marketing to teenagers. They say they never were marketing to teenagers, but that's hard to believe when you look at some of the advertisement. But it seems like they're now trying to dial that back and make it hard and very difficult for teens to now get it.
Right, and I think that's a great thing. Unfortunately, now we're 5 or 6 years into this problem, and so I think until Juul is able to implement what it's trying to do, until the FDA really gets its hands around this issue, that's why I think parents and schools and healthcare professionals need to be on the front lines of this. Parents need to recognize signs that their kid might be by using. For instance,
For instance,
are they going outside or to the bathroom during family gatherings? Do you smell a sweet odor on their clothes or in their room that they're maybe trying to conceal with air freshener? Are they complaining of being thirsty, having nosebleeds, being irritable or anxious?
Those are all really good tips.
Or you're finding stuff in their room that you don't really know what it is. It looks like some strange technology devices or cords or chargers.
Thank you, Dr. Narula.
One thing I think parents really will want to hear is the people responsible for the early Juul ads, those colorful ones. Kevin Burns tells me none of those people work for the company anymore. So on the question of have they turned a page, they've changed the team.
yeah.
They're taking steps.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for all that insight and all those tips.
Tara
for
is
parents.
riled up about this.
Yeah, we can talk
I
about
am
this all
riled
day.
up.
This is one of those
As
things
a parent of 2 young children.
Yeah, I get it.
No, and this will continue
Very-
into the break.